Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we step quietly into a place few would willingly imagine, a place where sleep is not comfort but endurance, and where winter turns even rest into a slow test of survival. Have you ever wondered what it truly felt like to lie down in darkness, knowing the cold would not fade, that the night would stretch long and uncertain, and that every small sound might carry meaning? There are stories hidden in stone walls, stories not of kings or battles, but of ordinary people trying to close their eyes in extraordinary discomfort. So before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe. And as you begin to relax, I would love to know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. Now dim the lights. You open your eyes slowly, though it is difficult to tell if they were ever truly closed. The darkness around you feels thick, almost tangible, pressing gently against your vision, as if the night itself has weight. For a moment you remain still, uncertain of where you are, your thoughts drifting like faint echoes that have not yet found their place. Then the cold makes itself known. It is not sudden. It is steady. It seeps into your awareness with quiet persistence, settling into your skin and your breath until you can no longer ignore it. The air feels damp and unmoving, carrying a chill that lingers without relief. You inhale, and the cold travels inward, sharp enough to remind you that this place does not warm easily. Beneath you the surface is uneven. Your body presses against something rough, something that gives only slightly before resisting again. Straw perhaps, though it feels older than it should, flattened by time and use. A faint rustling follows even your smallest movement, a dry whisper that blends into the silence. A mainstream historical understanding suggests that many medieval prisons offered little more than straw for bedding, often replaced infrequently if at all. As you shift your weight, you begin to understand why this mattered. The straw is not soft. It is brittle in places, damp in others, and carries with it a faint scent that suggests it has been here far too long. You adjust your arm slightly, a small movement necessary. Your fingers brush against the ground beneath the straw, and the cold stone answers immediately, firm and unyielding. It holds the chill of the entire room, perhaps of the entire season, as if it has absorbed winter and chosen never to release it. You pull your hand back instinctively, tucking it closer to your body. Somewhere beyond your immediate space a sound emerges. It is faint, distant, footsteps slow and measured, echoing along a corridor you cannot see. The rhythm is deliberate, suggesting purpose rather than urgency. A guard perhaps moving through the passage as part of a routine that continues whether you sleep or wake. The sound fades. Silence returns. You listen more carefully now, aware that the quiet is not empty but layered. There are subtle shifts within it, small movements that reveal the presence of others. A cough quickly stifled. The soft scrape of fabric against stone. A breath drawn a little too sharply. You are not alone. The realization settles gently, neither comforting nor alarming, simply present. Other figures exist in the darkness, separated by walls or distance, each experiencing their own version of this same night. You cannot see them, but you can sense them like distant stars hidden behind clouds. Historians still debate how isolated prisoners truly were in many medieval facilities, as some records suggest shared spaces, while others imply near total separation. In your case, the sounds hint at proximity, though not closeness. Enough to remind you of humanity, not enough to offer companionship. You shift again carefully this time, attempting to find a position that holds even a small measure of comfort. Your shoulder presses into the straw, your legs draw slightly inward, conserving warmth where you can. The effort feels instinctive, guided by a quiet understanding that stillness alone will not protect you from the cold. Your breath becomes visible, though only just. A faint cloud, brief. It disappears almost as quickly as it forms, dissolving into the dimness. The air is cold enough to reveal it, yet not cold enough to sustain it. You watch for a moment as if this small detail offers some connection to the world beyond these walls. A quirky historical detail emerges in your thoughts, perhaps recalled from some distant memory. In certain prisons, inmates were known to sleep in positions that minimized contact with stone, curling tightly or leaning against one another when possible, not out of comfort but necessity. Warmth, even the smallest amount, became something to preserve carefully. You try something similar now, drawing your limbs closer, reducing the space between your body and itself. It helps, slightly. The cold does not vanish, but it shifts, becoming something you can manage rather than something that overwhelms. You notice the difference, subtle as it is, and hold on to it. Time passes, or perhaps it simply stretches. Without light to mark its movement, the night feels endless, each moment blending into the next without clear boundary. You close your eyes again, not because sleep has come, but because it seems like the natural thing to do. Your thoughts drift. They move slowly, shaped by the quiet and the cold. Images form and dissolve without effort, fragments of memory or imagination that offer brief distraction before fading away. You do not chase them. There is no need. Another sound reaches you, closer this time. A faint metallic clink, followed by the soft scrape of something shifting against stone. Chains perhaps, or some other restraint adjusting as someone moves. The sound is not loud, but in the stillness it feels significant. You listen. Then it stops. Silence returns once more, deeper than before, as if the brief interruption has only made it more noticeable. You become aware of your own breathing again, steady and measured, the only constant in a space that offers few others. A gentle awareness settles in. You are here. This is real. And yet there is something strangely distant about it all, as if your mind has chosen to soften the edges of the experience, allowing you to observe rather than fully feel. It is a quiet form of adaptation, perhaps a way of enduring without becoming overwhelmed. You adjust your head slightly, finding a position that eases the tension in your neck. The straw shifts beneath you, producing that same dry whisper familiar now. It is not pleasant, but it is predictable, and in a place like this, predictability carries its own small comfort. You wait for sleep. It does not come quickly. Instead, you hover in that space between waking and rest where thoughts slow and sensations blur. The cold remains, the darkness persists, but they lose some of their sharpness, becoming part of a background that no longer demands constant attention. Another breath, slow, steady. You let it guide you, focusing on the rhythm rather than the discomfort. Inhale, feeling the cool air enter. Exhale, releasing it back into the stillness. It becomes a quiet anchor, something to hold on to as the night continues its silent passage. Somewhere far beyond these walls, the world continues. But here time moves differently. Here you simply exist within it, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, you begin to drift closer to sleep, not because the conditions invite it, but because your body, despite everything, still seeks rest. You remain where you are, suspended between shallow rest and quiet awareness, as your senses begin to adjust more fully to the space around you. The darkness no longer feels as complete as it did before. It has subtle layers now, faint variations that suggest form and distance rather than endless black. You open your eyes again, this time with more intention. At first, nothing changes. Then slowly you begin to notice a slight difference in tone along one side of your vision. A faint greyness, barely there, hinting at a boundary where wall meets air. It is not light in any meaningful sense, but it is enough to give shape to the space. You are inside something small. The realization comes quietly, confirmed not by sight alone, but by the way sound behaves. When you shift your arm, the rustle of straw returns quickly, contained, as if it has nowhere else to travel. When you breathe, the air feels close-used, carrying traces of what has lingered here before you. A mainstream historical observation tells us that many medieval prison cells were extremely compact, often designed less for habitation and more for containment. As you extend your legs slightly, you meet resistance sooner than expected. Stone again, unyielding, marking the edge of your limited world. You pause, then adjust. There is a certain care in how you move now, not out of fear, but out of necessity. Every motion carries consequence in a space this confined. A shift too wide and you press into cold stone. A turn too sudden, and the straw beneath you shifts unevenly, offering less support than before. The wall beside you feels closer than it should. You reach out slowly, your hand moving through the dim air until your fingers make contact. The surface is rough, textured with irregularities that speak of age and imperfect construction. You trace it lightly, feeling the grooves and small ridges beneath your skin. It is cold, deeply so. Not the kind of cold that comes and goes, but something that seems rooted within the stone itself. You hold your hand there for a moment, then pull it back instinctively, seeking the relative warmth of your own body. A faint draft brushes against your cheek. It is subtle, almost easy to miss, but once noticed it becomes difficult to ignore. The air shifts slightly, moving from one unseen point to another. Perhaps a narrow opening exists somewhere above or beyond your reach, allowing the outside world to breathe faintly into this enclosed space. Historians still question how much ventilation these cells truly had, as some accounts describe nearly sealed chambers, while others mention small slits or barred openings. In your case, the draft suggests at least some connection to the outside, though it offers little comfort in winter. If anything, it carries more cold. You turn your head slightly toward the direction of the movement, as if you might see it, though of course you cannot. The faint greyness shifts again, revealing what might be a narrow vertical line slightly lighter than the surrounding darkness. Bars, perhaps. A window, if it can be called that. You watch it for a moment, letting your eyes adjust further. The line remains faint but steady, a reminder that beyond this space there is distance air and a world that continues without you. The smell reaches you next. It has been present all along, but now that your senses have sharpened, it becomes clearer, more defined. Dampness lingers in the air, mixed with the earthy scent of old straw and the faint trace of something sour. It is not overwhelming, but it is persistent, settling into each breath you take. You inhale carefully, then exhale. A quirky detail from historical accounts suggests that prisoners sometimes became so accustomed to these conditions that the smell itself faded into the background, noticed only when it changed. You begin to understand how that might happen. Already the scent feels less intrusive than it did moments ago. Your body continues to adapt. You shift slightly onto your side, testing a new position. The straw compresses unevenly beneath you, creating small pockets of relative softness, alongside areas that press sharply against your skin. It is not comfortable, but it is manageable. For now, your shoulder brushes the wall as you settle, and the contact sends a quiet chill through you. You pull away instinctively, creating a small gap between yourself and the stone. Even a few inches feel significant here. A sound echoes faintly from beyond your cell, voices this time low and indistinct, blending together in a murmur that carries no clear meaning. They rise and fall briefly, then fade again into the distance. You listen curious, but the words remain just out of reach. Another reminder. You are part of something larger, even if you cannot see it. The corridor beyond your walls continues to exist, filled with movement, routine, and lives unfolding in ways both similar and different to your own. Guards pass through. Other prisoners stir in their own confined spaces. The building itself breathes quietly, responding to the night. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, not yet, just to feel. The air against your skin, the weight of your body against the straw, the slow rhythm of your breathing as it settles into a steady pattern. Each sensation becomes more distinct when you focus on it, less overwhelming, more defined. Time stretches once more. You begin to lose track of it again, though in a different way than before. Instead of drifting aimlessly, your awareness narrows, focusing on the immediate, the tangible. The past and future feel distant, less relevant than the simple act of being here now. Another small movement. Your hand shifts slightly, brushing against something that was not there before. You pause your fingers, exploring carefully. It is just a loose piece of straw, bent at an odd angle, perhaps broken from use. You roll it gently between your fingers, feeling its texture. Dry, fragile. You let it go. The simplicity of the action feels grounding, a small reminder that even in this place, there are details to notice, textures to explore, moments to experience. It is not comfort exactly, but it is something. A faint drop of moisture lands near. You hear it more than feel it, a soft tap against stone that echoes briefly before disappearing. You wait listening for another, and after a moment it comes. Slow, irregular, as if water has found its way through cracks above. Drip. Then silence. Drip again. A minor detail perhaps, but one that speaks to the condition of the space. Dampness is not just in the air. It is part of the structure itself, woven into the walls, the floor, the very foundation of your surroundings. You shift slightly to avoid it. Even small discomforts matter here. Another breath. Slow. Measured. Your body continues to settle, finding a balance between tension and rest. The cold remains, the space remains, but your awareness of them changes, softens at the edges. You're no longer reacting to every sensation, only observing. And in that observation, something shifts. The cell feels less like an unknown place and more like a defined environment, one you're beginning to understand piece by piece. Its limits are clearer, its patterns more familiar, its presence less overwhelming. You lie still once more, listening, breathing, waiting for sleep to come, not as an escape, but as a natural continuation of this quiet, steady night. You remain on your side for a while, letting the quiet settle more deeply around you. The shape of the cell is no longer a mystery, and your body has begun to accept its limits without resistance. Now your attention turns to what lies directly beneath you. The thin layer that separates your body from the unyielding stone. The straw, it shifts slightly as you move your leg, producing that familiar dry whisper. At first it seemed like nothing more than a crude attempt at comfort, but the longer you lie here, the more you begin to understand its role. It is not meant to soften the ground entirely. It is meant to create just enough distance. You press your palm down gently. The straw compresses, then stops. Beneath it, the cold presence of stone waits patiently, never far away. The thin barrier offers only partial relief, but even that small difference feels meaningful. Without it, the chill would seep into you faster, deeper. A widely accepted historical detail suggests that straw bedding was often reused for long periods, rarely replaced unless absolutely necessary. As you shift your weight again, the texture tells its own quiet story. Some strands are brittle and snap softly under pressure. Others cling together in damp clusters, slightly heavier, slightly colder. You adjust your position carefully. Turning onto your back this time, you feel the straw redistribute beneath you, uneven but familiar. Small ridges form where the material gathers, pressing gently against your shoulders and hips. It is not painful, but it reminds you that comfort here is always conditional. The smell rises more clearly now. It lingers close to the surface, released with each movement. Earthy at first, then something sharper, something that hints at long use and limited care. You breathe through it slowly, allowing your senses to adjust rather than resist. A curious historical note suggests that straw, in such environments, often carried more than scent, sometimes harbouring insects or small creatures that found shelter within it. The thought passes through your mind quietly, not alarming, just present. In a place like this, sharing space is inevitable. You shift your arm slightly. The straw rustles again, louder this time in the stillness. You pause, listening to the sound fade, then settle once more. It becomes part of the rhythm of the space, a soft counterpoint to your breathing. There is a certain logic to how you move now. Each adjustment is slower, more deliberate, guided by the understanding that sudden motion brings discomfort. You test small changes, noticing how the straw responds, how your body reacts. Over time, you begin to find positions that hold just a little more ease than others. You draw one knee upward, then pause. The shift creates a pocket of warmth, small but noticeable, where your body folds inward. It is not a dramatic change, but it is enough to register. You hold that position, letting the sensation settle. A faint itch brushes against your wrist. You notice it immediately. It is subtle, almost imagined, but persistent enough to draw your attention. You move your hand, slightly brushing the area, and the feeling fades. For now. It leaves behind a quiet awareness of what might exist within the straw, unseen but present. Scholars continue to debate how widespread such conditions were across different regions and prisons, as records vary in detail and reliability. Some accounts describe relatively maintained bedding, while others suggest far harsher realities. Your experience leans toward the latter, though even here there are small degrees of variation. You shift again, this time adjusting your shoulders. The straw responds with a soft collapse, then settles. A few loose strands press against your neck, tickling slightly before you brush them away. The contact is brief, but enough to remind you that this surface is never entirely still. You exhale slowly. The air moves across your face, cool and steady. Your breath has found a rhythm now, one that matches the pace of the night itself. Inhale, then release. Each cycle brings a small sense of stability, something consistent in a place that offers little else. Somewhere nearby, a faint movement echoes. A rustle not your own. You listen carefully, your body still. The sound comes again, slightly sharper this time, as if another person shifts within their own bedding. The distance is unclear, but it is close enough to hear, close enough to remind you once more that you are not alone. The thought settles quietly, not comforting, not distressing. Just true. You adjust your head slightly, finding a better angle against the uneven surface. The straw compresses beneath your weight, creating a shallow indentation that holds for a moment before easing back. It is a small detail, but one that adds to your growing familiarity with this place. Time continues to move, though, without clear markers. You measure it in sensations now. The gradual cooling of the air against your skin, the slow shift of your body as it settles deeper into stillness, the occasional sound that rises and falls, marking moments that would otherwise pass unnoticed. Your thoughts drift again. Not far, just enough. They move through fragments of memory impressions rather than clear images. A place that felt warmer, a surface that yielded more easily, a night that passed without effort. These memories do not linger. They simply pass through like quiet visitors that do not stay. You return to the present. The straw beneath you, the stone below it, the air around you. Everything remains as it was, yet your experience of it has changed. What once felt unfamiliar now carries a certain predictability. You know how the straw will respond when you move. You know how the cold will settle if you remain still. You shift one last time, a small adjustment, then stop. Your body finds a position that feels, if not comfortable, then at least sustainable. The straw supports you unevenly, the air remains cold, the darkness holds steady. Nothing has improved in any obvious way, yet something within you has adapted, and that adaptation brings a quiet sense of acceptance. You close your eyes once more, not in expectation of immediate sleep, but in recognition that rest, however imperfect, will come in its own time. The straw rustles softly beneath you, then stills. The sounds beyond your cell fade into the background once again. You remain there, breathing slowly, allowing the night to continue around you. Waiting, you lie still, your body finally settling into a fragile balance between tension and rest when the cold begins to change. It is no longer just a steady presence surrounding you. It deepens, almost as if the night itself has shifted, drawing more of winter into the stone around you. You notice it first along your feet, a slow creeping sensation. The warmth you had gathered fades, gradually slipping away without urgency, but with quiet certainty. You flex your toes slightly, testing the feeling, then draw your legs inward again, instinct guiding the movement more than thought. The air feels sharper now. It brushes against your face with a faint edge, as though it has travelled a longer distance through the cold before reaching you. You inhale carefully, and the chill settles into your chest, subtle but unmistakable. In many medieval structures, especially those built of thick stone, temperature often dropped further during the deepest hours of night, as heat absorbed during the day slowly dissipated. You experience that process now not as a concept, but as something that touches every part of you. You shift your shoulders slightly. The straw rustles beneath you, offering the same thin barrier as before, yet it feels less effective now. The cold has found its way through, seeping upward from the stone with renewed persistence. You pull your arms closer, crossing them loosely against your body. It helps, but only a little. A faint draft returns, brushing along your neck this time. You follow it instinctively, turning your head toward its source. The narrow opening you noticed earlier seems to draw the outside air inward, a quiet exchange that brings no warmth, only movement. A small pause, then another breath. You begin to notice how the cold moves differently depending on where you lie. Some areas of the floor seem to hold it more intensely, while others feel almost neutral by comparison. You shift slightly, testing the difference, searching for a position that offers even the smallest advantage. This becomes a quiet task. Not urgent, not frantic. Just careful. A lesser-known detail from certain records suggests that prisoners sometimes learn the subtle patterns of their cells, over time identifying places where drafts were weaker, or where the ground held slightly less chill. You are beginning that process now, though you do not name it. You simply feel. Your hand brushes the wall again, more by accident than intention. The cold there is deeper, more fixed, as if the stone has absorbed the winter itself and refuses to let it go. You pull your hand back quickly, tucking it beneath your arm for warmth. Better, for a moment. This silence around you feels heavier now, not because it has grown louder, but because your awareness of it has sharpened. Every small sound seems clearer against the stillness, a faint shift in the straw, the distant echo of movement far down the corridor, and beneath it all your breathing. Steady, measured, you let it guide you again, focusing on its rhythm as a way to remain grounded. Inhale, feeling the cold enter. Exhale, releasing it slowly. The pattern becomes a quiet anchor, something consistent in a space that offers little stability. A soft tremor passes through your body, barely noticeable. Your muscles tighten for a moment, reacting to the cold without your conscious direction. You recognize it not as fear, but as a natural response, a way your body tries to generate warmth where none is given. You adjust slightly, pressing your legs closer together. Then still. A brief sensation crosses your skin, light and uncertain, as though the air itself has shifted again. You pause attentive, but nothing follows. The feeling fades, leaving only the steady presence of the cold behind. Some accounts from the period suggest that winter nights in confinement were often described not as sharply painful, but as endlessly draining, wearing down the body through constant exposure rather than sudden extremes. That description fits your experience now. It is not overwhelming. It is persistent. You turn your head slightly, letting your cheek rest against the straw. The texture feels different here, softer in some places, coarser in others. A few loose strands press lightly against your skin, then settle as you remain still. The faint draft returns once more, this time along your hands. You notice how quickly the warmth leaves them when exposed, how the air draws it away without effort. You tuck them closer, folding them inward, protecting them as best you can. A quiet realization forms. Warmth is something to be held carefully. Your body begins to conserve itself in small ways. Movements become less frequent. Adjustments grow slower, more deliberate. Even your breathing shifts slightly, becoming more controlled, as if to preserve the warmth within your chest. The night deepens. Though you cannot see it, you can feel it in the way the air settles, in the absence of distant sounds, in the stillness that grows more complete. The world beyond your cell seems to quiet, leaving you with only the immediate and the near. Another sound reaches you. Faint, a low murmur perhaps from another prisoner, though the words are lost in distance. It rises briefly, then fades, leaving behind a sense of presence without clarity. You listen for a moment longer, but nothing follows. You are left once again with silence. And the cold. You shift your weight one last time, finding a position that holds as much warmth as possible. Your body curls slightly, your limbs drawn inward, your posture compact. It is not comfortable, but it is effective. You remain there, still, Breathing. A question passes quietly through your thoughts. How long until morning? There is no answer. Time continues to stretch unmeasured and uncertain, marked only by the slow passage of sensation and the gradual adaptation of your body to the conditions around it. Your awareness softens again. The sharpness of the cold dulls slightly, not because it has lessened, but because you have grown accustomed to it. It becomes part of the background, something that exists without demanding constant attention. You close your eyes, not fully asleep, not fully awake, just resting in that quiet space between where the body endures and the mind drifts, gently carried by the slow rhythm of breath and the steady presence of the winter night. You remain in that quiet in-between state where awareness drifts softly but never fully disappears. The cold has settled into your body now, no longer a sharp intrusion, but a constant companion. It lingers in your hands, your feet, the curve of your back where the straw offers only thin resistance. And in this stillness, sound begins to take on a new shape. At first it is barely noticeable, a distant echo faint enough to blend into the silence. You might have missed it earlier when your senses were still adjusting. But now, with everything else so steady, even the smallest noise becomes clear. You listen. The echo returns slightly stronger this time, a measured step followed by another, each one spaced with deliberate care. The rhythm travels through the stone, not loud, but persistent enough to reach you. Footsteps again, but different, slower, heavier. You imagine the corridor beyond your cell, long and narrow, lined with doors like yours. The sound moves through that unseen space, touching each surface, before arriving here softened but recognizable. In many medieval prisons, guards followed regular patrol routes throughout the night, not only to maintain order, but to reinforce a sense of control. The pattern you hear now suggests such a routine, steady and unchanging. The steps continue, then pause. You hold still, as if your movement might somehow draw attention, though you know it will not. The pause stretches for a moment, then the steps resume, gradually fading as they move further away. Silence returns, but it is not the same silence as before. Now it feels layered, filled with the memory of sound, as though the space itself remembers what has just passed through it. You become more aware of the subtle shifts within it, the small disturbances that rise and fall. A faint clink reaches you. Metal against metal. It is brief, almost delicate, followed by a soft scrape that lingers slightly longer. You picture a chain shifting perhaps as someone moves or adjusts their position. The sound is not close, but it is clear enough to place within the same shared environment. You listen again. Nothing follows. Only the quiet remains stretching outward in every direction, touching the edges of your awareness, before fading into something softer. A small exhale escapes you. Slow, controlled. Your breathing has become one of the few sounds you can predict, one of the few that belongs entirely to you. You focus on it again, letting it guide your attention away from the uncertainty beyond your cell. But the night has more to offer. Another sound emerges different from the others. A whisper. Not a clear voice, not words you can understand, but a low murmur that rises briefly before dissolving into the air. It feels closer than the footsteps, though still beyond your reach. You tilt your head slightly, listening more carefully. The whisper comes again, softer this time, as if someone speaks not to be heard, but because silence has become too heavy to hold. You cannot make out the meaning, but the presence of it lingers. Some accounts from the period describe prisoners speaking quietly in the dark, sharing fragments of thought or memory across unseen distances, not for conversation but for reassurance. You wonder if this is one of those moments. The whisper fades. Silence returns once more. You shift slightly the straw, responding with its familiar rustle. The sound feels louder now, more noticeable against the quiet. You pause, letting it settle, then remain still again. Your body has grown more sensitive, not just to the cold, but to everything. Every movement, every sound, even the absence of sound carries weight. A faint drip echoes from somewhere above or beyond your cell, the same slow rhythm you noticed before. It falls at irregular intervals, each drop marking a moment in time that would otherwise pass unnoticed. Drip. Pause. Drip again. You begin to follow it without thinking, letting the pattern guide your sense of time. It is not consistent enough to measure anything precisely, but it offers a sense of continuity, a quiet reminder that the world still moves even here. A soft scraping sound interrupts the rhythm, closer this time. You freeze instinctively, your body stilling as your attention sharpens. The sound comes again, a subtle shift against stone followed by a faint rustle. It could be another prisoner or something smaller. You wait, listening. The sound repeats once more, then stops. The silence that follows feels deeper, as if the space itself is holding its breath. You relax, slowly letting the tension leave your body in small increments. Your breathing steadies again, returning to its quiet rhythm. The night continues. You notice now how sound travels differently depending on its source. Some noises arrive clearly carrying their shape and direction. Others blur into the background, indistinct and distant. The stone walls shape everything, bending and softening what passes through them. A curious historical detail notes that in some prisons the architecture itself influenced how prisoners experienced sound, creating echoes that made distances difficult to judge. You begin to understand that confusion now. A sound might feel close, then far, then gone entirely. You adjust your position slightly, pressing your shoulder deeper into the straw. The movement creates a brief burst of sound, louder than you expect. You pause again, listening, but nothing responds. No footsteps, no voices, only the quiet. Your awareness begins to shift once more, moving away from the external and inward again. The sounds remain, but they no longer demand your full attention. They become part of the background, like the cold, like the darkness. You close your eyes, not fully asleep, not fully awake, just listening. The drip continues. The occasional murmur rises and fades. Somewhere far away, a step echoes briefly before disappearing. Each sound exists for a moment, then gives way to silence again. And within that rhythm, something begins to settle. Not comfort, but familiarity. The night no longer feels entirely unknown. It has patterns now, small and subtle, but present. You begin to recognize them, to anticipate them, even if only faintly. Your breathing slows further. Your body remains still. The sounds continue around you, but they no longer pull you fully from rest. Instead, they pass through your awareness gently, like distant waves that rise and fall without disturbing the surface. You remain there suspended between listening and drifting as the night carries on quiet and unbroken. You remain wrapped in that quiet rhythm of sound and stillness, your awareness rising and falling like a slow tide. The night feels longer now, not because time has changed, but because your body has begun to register new needs. Hunger arrives gradually. At first, it is only a faint awareness, a hollow space somewhere deep within you. It does not demand attention immediately. It simply exists, subtle and patient, waiting to be noticed. You shift slightly. The movement stirs something more, a quiet tightening in your stomach, not sharp, not painful, but persistent enough to draw your focus inward. You exhale slowly, letting your body settle again, but the sensation remains. It grows, slowly. You swallow though, there's nothing to ease the feeling. Your mouth feels dry now, the air around you offering no relief. You run your tongue lightly along your teeth, a small instinctive motion that does little to help. In many medieval prisons, food was sparse, and often delivered only once or twice a day, sometimes consisting of coarse bread or thin broth. You begin to sense what that reality meant, not as a distant fact, but as something lived in the body. Hunger is not sudden. It lingers. You shift your position again, drawing your knees slightly closer as if the movement might distract you. For a moment it does. The straw rustles beneath you, and your attention follows the sound. Then the feeling returns. A steady pull. You breathe in slowly, focusing on the cool air entering your chest. The sensation of cold briefly overtakes the hollow within, offering a momentary shift in awareness. You hold that breath for a second, then release it gently. The rhythm helps. A little. Some historical descriptions suggest that prisoners learn to manage hunger by pacing their awareness, focusing on other sensations, or letting time pass without resistance. You find yourself doing something similar now, though it comes naturally rather than by choice. You listen again. The sounds of the prison continue as before, distant and uneven. A faint step echoes somewhere far off, followed by silence. The drip of water returns, marking another quiet moment in the night. Drip. Pause. Drip again. You follow the pattern, briefly letting it anchor your thoughts. It works for a time, guiding your attention away from the growing emptiness within. But hunger has its own persistence. It returns not stronger but more noticeable now that you are aware of it. A gentle ache settles deeper, spreading slowly as if it has found its place. You shift your arm, resting your hand lightly against your stomach. A simple gesture. It offers a small sense of connection, though no real relief. Your body responds with a subtle tightening, then stills again. A curious historical note suggests that some prisoners would save small portions of food if they could to ease the night, not out of luxury, but as a way to manage this very feeling. The idea passes through your mind quietly, not as regret, but as understanding. There is nothing to reach for here, only the present moment. You adjust your breathing again, letting it deepen slightly. The air remains cold, but the rhythm steadies you. Inhale, then release. Each cycle creates a gentle rise and fall within your chest, a movement that feels controlled, reliable. Your thoughts begin to drift. Not far, not vividly, just enough to soften the edges of your awareness. The memory of warmth returns briefly, not in detail, but in sensation. A place where food was not uncertain, where hunger did not linger like this. It fades quickly. You return to the cell. The straw, the stone, the cold air. Everything remains unchanged, yet your experience of it continues to shift. Hunger becomes part of the background now, like the cold, like the sounds beyond the wall. It does not disappear, but it settles into a steady presence. You turn slightly onto your other side. The movement is slow, careful, guided by the need to avoid unnecessary discomfort. The straw compresses beneath you, forming new shapes, new points of contact. You adjust until the position feels stable. Then still, a faint sound reaches you. Soft! A low breath, perhaps, from another nearby, drawn in sharply before fading again. It carries a quiet strain, a hint of the same discomfort you feel though expressed differently. You listen for a moment, then let it go. The shared nature of this place becomes clearer with each passing hour. Different bodies, different thoughts, yet many of the same sensations. Cold, hunger, rest that never fully arrives. You exhale slowly. The air leaves your lungs in a steady stream, warm for just a moment before it cools. You watch for the faint trace of it in the darkness, though there is little to see. Another pause, then stillness again. Your body begins to conserve itself more deliberately now. Movements become rarer. Muscles relax where they can, holding only the tension that is necessary. Even your thoughts seem to slow, becoming less frequent, less defined. Hunger remains, but it no longer dominates. It simply exists alongside everything else. A quiet companion to the night. You close your eyes once more, letting your awareness drift inward. The sounds around you continue faint and distant, but they no longer pull you fully back. They pass through your mind, gently leaving little trace. The drip continues, the occasional step echoes, a murmur rises then fades, and through it all your breathing remains steady. You follow it again. Inhale, exhale, a simple pattern. Reliable. In a place where so little can be controlled, this small rhythm becomes something to hold on to, something that belongs entirely to you. Time stretches onward, unmarked, unhurried, and within it you remain balancing between wakefulness and rest. Your body, adapting your mind, softening as the long winter night continues around you. You remain still, your breathing slow, and even as the night continues to unfold around you. Hunger has settled into a quiet presence, no longer sharp but never fully gone. The cold remains steady. The sounds drift in and out of awareness. And now something else begins to take shape. The smell. It has always been there, woven into the air from the moment you arrived, but your senses have adapted slowly, allowing it to emerge in layers rather than all at once. Now, as your body grows more accustomed to the cold and the stillness, your attention shifts toward it more clearly. You inhale gently. The air carries a weight beyond temperature. Dampness comes first, soft and lingering like earth that has held moisture for too long. Beneath it, something sharper rises, faint but persistent. A sour note not overwhelming but difficult to ignore once noticed. You pause, then breathe again. The scent changes slightly with each inhale, revealing different elements depending on how deeply you draw it in. There is the dry, brittle trace of old straw mixed with the heavier presence of stone that has absorbed years of confinement, and something else, fainter, less defined, human. In many medieval holding cells, sanitation was minimal or entirely absent, meaning that spaces like this often held the lingering traces of those who'd occupied them before. You begin to understand how scent becomes part of the environment, something that cannot easily be removed. You shift your head slightly. The movement stirs the air around you and the smell changes again, becoming briefly stronger before settling back into its usual state. It is not constant in intensity, but it is always present. You exhale slowly, letting the air leave your body. A lesser-known observation from historical descriptions suggests that over time, prisoners often stopped consciously noticing these smells unless something new disturbed the balance. Your own experience begins to mirror that pattern. The scent fades slightly, not because it has gone, but because your awareness of it softens. You turn your face toward the faint draft again, allowing the moving air to brush across your skin. For a moment it feels cleaner though colder, carrying less of the heavy stillness that lingers within the cell. You inhale, the difference is subtle, but real. You hold that position for a while, letting the faint movement of air create a small pocket of relief, even as it brings more cold with it. It is a trade you accept without thinking. A small sound interrupts your focus, a quiet shift from somewhere nearby. You listen. The rustle is soft, irregular, as though something moves through material rather than across stone. It is not the measured sound of footsteps, nor the deliberate motion of another person. Something smaller. You remain still. The sound comes again, closer this time, followed by a faint scratching that lasts only a moment before stopping. Your senses sharpen slightly, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Creatures often found their way into spaces like this, drawn by warmth, by food, or simply by the shelter of enclosed stone. The thought passes through your mind calmly, without urgency. You wait. The scratching does not return, only silence. You relax again, letting your body settle back into stillness. The straw beneath you shifts slightly, then grows quiet once more. The scent remains, the cold persists, the night continues. Your awareness begins to shift inward again. The smell no longer stands at the front of your senses. It becomes part of the background, like the distant sounds, like the slow drip of water, like the steady rhythm of your breath. You inhale, exhale. Each breath carries the same mixture of air, unchanged, yet less intrusive than before. Your body adapts not by altering the environment, but by adjusting to it. A faint memory drifts through your thoughts. Not clear, not detailed, just a sense of freshness. Open air. A place where breathing required no effort, where scent did not linger or press against you. The contrast is gentle, not painful, and it fades quickly as your mind returns to the present. You shift slightly onto your back again. The straw responds with its familiar rustle, and the movement stirs the air once more. The scent deepens briefly, then settles. You pause, then remain still. Time continues to pass, unmarked. Your body grows quieter, conserving energy, reducing movement to only what is necessary. Even your thoughts seem to slow, drifting less frequently, staying closer to the surface of awareness. A faint murmur reaches you again, soft, indistinct. It rises and falls quickly, like a thought spoken aloud without intention. You listen, but it fades before you can focus on it fully. The presence of others remains distant yet undeniable. You exhale slowly. The air leaves your body in a steady stream, carrying a trace of warmth that disappears almost immediately. You follow the motion with your awareness, letting it guide you back towards stillness. The smell remains, but it no longer defines the space. It exists alongside everything else, one part of a larger whole that your senses have begun to accept. What once felt overwhelming now feels familiar, even expected. You close your eyes again. The darkness behind them is no different from the darkness around you, yet the act itself feels natural, a quiet step toward rest. Your breathing remains steady, your body still, your awareness soft. The night continues, cold, quiet, unchanging, and within it you remain no longer resisting the conditions around you, but allowing them to exist as they are while you drift gently between wakefulness and sleep. You rest in that softened state for a while, your awareness drifting gently between sensation and quiet thought. The cold remains steady. The smells have settled into the background. Hunger lingers without urgency. Everything feels suspended as though the night itself is holding its breath. Then slowly a new pattern begins to emerge. Movement beyond your cell. It starts faintly, almost too distant to notice. A soft shift of sound along the corridor, different from the slow measured steps you heard earlier. This time there is a slight irregularity to it, a variation that suggests more than one presence. You listen. The sound grows clearer. Footsteps again, but not alone. One set then another, overlapping briefly before separating. The rhythm feels less deliberate, less controlled, as though the night has entered a different phase. You remain still. Your body does not react outwardly, but your attention sharpens, drawn toward the subtle change. The space beyond your walls, once quiet and predictable, now carries a quiet sense of activity. In many documented accounts of medieval confinement, guards often followed loose schedules rather than strict rotations, meaning their movements could vary depending on time weather or simple human fatigue. What you hear now seems to reflect that variation. The steps approach. Then slow, a faint pause settles in the corridor just beyond your reach. You sense it more than hear it, a moment where motion gives way to stillness. Perhaps someone stands nearby. Perhaps they listen just as you do now. A quiet breath escapes you. Controlled. Careful. You do not move. After a moment, the steps resume softer this time, as though the figure has turned away. The sound recedes, gradually fading into the distance until it blends once more with the silence. But the quiet does not return in the same way. Now you are aware of the possibility of interruption. You listen more closely. Every faint echo feels significant. Every shift in air carries meaning. The corridor beyond your cell is no longer just a distant presence. It feels connected to you, part of the same unfolding night. A low murmur follows, closer than before. Two voices perhaps, though they blend together in a way that makes them difficult to separate. The tones are subdued, restrained, as if the speakers intend not to be heard. Still, the sound travels softened by stone but present. You tilt your head slightly. Listening? The murmur continues for a few seconds, then fades, leaving behind only the faint impression of human presence. You cannot make out words, only the cadence of speech, the rise and fall of quiet voices in the dark. A subtle realization forms. Even those who move freely within this place do not fully escape its quiet. They too lower their voices. They too move carefully. A lesser discussed detail in some historical descriptions suggests that guards working night watches often develop their own quiet routines, speaking softly, walking slowly, allowing the stillness to shape their behavior just as it shapes yours. You shift slightly onto your side again. The straw responds with a muted rustle, and you pause listening for any reaction beyond the wall. Nothing follows. The corridor has settled once more, though not as deeply as before. You exhale slowly. Your breath feels steady, controlled, yet there is a slight awareness now that each movement exists within a shared environment. Even here, even in stillness, you are part of a larger system. A faint metallic sound echoes briefly. A key perhaps, or a latch being tested. The sound is distant but clear enough to recognize. It lingers for a moment, then disappears, leaving behind a subtle tension in the air. You wait. Nothing else follows. The silence returns, but it feels thinner now, less complete. It holds the memory of recent movement, the trace of voices, the echo of footsteps that may return again at any moment. You adjust your arms slightly, folding them closer to your body. The cold remains, but your focus has shifted. It no longer dominates your awareness. Instead, you find yourself listening more intently attuned to the patterns beyond your cell. A faint scrape sounds again, farther away this time. Perhaps a door, perhaps a chain. It is difficult to tell. You let the uncertainty remain without pressing for answers. In this place, not everything can be known, and that understanding brings a quiet acceptance rather than unease. Your breathing slows further. The rhythm steadies. The sounds beyond the wall begin to fade again, returning to their earlier pattern of distant, occasional interruption. The corridor settles, and with it your awareness begins to soften once more. Another breath. Slow. Even. You close your eyes again, allowing the darkness to feel complete, uninterrupted by the faint shapes you could barely perceive before. The space around you remains unchanged, yet your experience of it continues to shift. The guards move, the night continues, and you remain still within it, part of the quiet rhythm that defines this place, listening as the last traces of movement fade into the distance. You remain with your eyes closed, letting the last traces of distant movement fade into the background. The corridor is quieted again, and the rhythm of the prison returns to its slower, more familiar pace. Your breathing steadies your body still, your awareness hovering gently between waking and rest. At some point, without noticing exactly when your thoughts begin to drift more freely, they loosen, the edges soften. You're no longer focused on the straw beneath you or the cold against your skin. Instead, something quieter takes hold, a shift that feels natural, almost inevitable, after so many long moments of stillness. Sleep begins to approach, not all at once. Gradually, a faint image forms in your mind, not clear enough to hold, but present enough to notice. It moves slowly, like something seen through mist, carrying no sharp detail, only a suggestion of shape and feeling. You do not try to understand it. You simply allow it. Your body relaxes, further muscles easing in places you had not realized were tense. The cold remains, but it feels distant now, less immediate, as if your awareness has stepped slightly away from it. Another breath. Slow. Deep. You drift a little further. Then something shifts. A sound, faint but distinct, touches the edge of your awareness. It pulls gently, not enough to fully wake you, but enough to disturb the fragile balance you have reached. You pause. Your thoughts hesitate. The sound comes again, sharper this time. A quick movement perhaps nearby, followed by a soft scraping that cuts through the quiet more clearly than before. Your eyes open. The darkness returns fully. The image fades. You lie still, listening. The sound lingers in your mind, though it does not repeat immediately. For a moment you're uncertain whether it was real, or part of the drifting space you had entered. Then it comes again, closer. A small shift within the straw, just beyond where your body rests. You feel a slight disturbance, not through touch, but through the subtle change in how the material settles. You remain still. Careful. The sensation passes. A small creature perhaps moving briefly through the bedding before disappearing again. The thought forms without urgency, shaped by what you have already come to expect from this place. In some preserved accounts, there are mentions of rodents and insects sharing confined spaces with prisoners drawn by warmth or by the remnants of food. These creatures were not always seen, but often heard, their presence woven into the experience of the night. You exhale slowly. The tension leaves your body in a controlled release, your muscles easing once more. The interruption has passed, leaving behind only a faint trace of alertness that gradually fades. You close your eyes again. Sleep feels further away now. Not gone, just delayed. Your thoughts return slower than before, more cautious, as if they have learned that the quiet can be broken at any moment. The images that form are lighter, less defined, drifting in and out without settling. A memory surfaces briefly, not vivid, not detailed, just a sense of lying somewhere softer, somewhere warmer where the night passed without interruption. It lingers for a moment, then dissolves, leaving you once again in the present. The straw shifts slightly beneath you as your body relaxes, a soft rustle, then stillness. You adjust your position just enough to find that fragile balance again, your limbs drawn inward, your body compact. The cold presses against you, but your awareness begins to soften once more. Another breath. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm returns. A faint drip echoes from somewhere above, marking another quiet moment in the night. You follow it without thinking, letting the pattern guide your attention away from the lingering restlessness. Drip. Pause. Drip again. Your thoughts slow. The sounds blend together once more, forming a quiet backdrop that no longer demands your full attention. The small disturbance in the straw fades into memory, no longer immediate, no longer sharp. Sleep begins to approach again, more cautiously this time. You allow it. Your body responds, settling deeper into stillness, your breathing softening further. The cold remains, the darkness persists, but they no longer stand at the center of your awareness. Instead, there's a gentle drift, a sense of letting go. Your thoughts lose their structure, becoming less like words and more like impressions. Time feels less defined, each moment blending into the next without clear boundary. You are close now, very close. Then somewhere in the distance a faint sound rises, not sharp enough to wake you fully, not soft enough to ignore. It hovers at the edge of your awareness, a quiet reminder that this place never fully rests, that the night continues in ways both seen and unseen. You remain where you are, balanced, not fully asleep, not fully awake. Your body rests, your mind drifts, and the night carries on around you, steady and unbroken as you hover gently within it. You hover in that delicate space between drifting and returning, where sleep brushes close but never fully settles. Your body feels heavier now, as if each limb has quietly accepted the effort of stillness. The cold remains, though it no longer feels sharp. It has become part of you, something your body has learned to carry rather than resist. Your back presses gently into the straw. Beneath it, the stone waits. You notice the contact more clearly now. The weight of your body creates small points of pressure, places where the thin layer beneath you gives way to the harder surface below. It is not pain, but it is not ease either. It simply exists steady and unchanging. You shift your hips slightly. A small movement. The straw rearranges beneath you, creating a new pattern of support. Some areas feel softer for a moment, others firmer. You pause, letting the new position settle, sensing how your body responds. Better, for now. You draw your arms closer again, folding them across your chest, then adjust them lower, resting your hands near your stomach. Each position offers something slightly different. A bit more warmth, a bit less pressure. You test them without hurry, guided by quiet instinct. Over time, prisoners learn to use their own bodies as a source of warmth, curling inward or pressing limbs together to reduce exposure. This simple act becomes a form of survival, small but effective. You find yourself doing the same, not out of thought, but necessity. You roll gently onto your side. The movement is slow, careful, conserving energy. The straw responds with a soft rustle, then settles as your weight shifts. Your shoulder presses into a slightly raised patch, while your hip finds a shallow hollow. You adjust again. A fraction of movement, then stillness. Your knees draw closer to your chest, creating a tighter shape. The air touches less of your body this way, and the warmth you hold remains closer contained. It is not comfort in the way you once knew it, but it is something your body recognizes as better. You rest there, curled, breathing slowly. A faint sensation travels along your back where it faces the open air. The cold brushes lightly against the fabric of your clothing, slipping through where it can. You notice how even small shifts in position change the way it reaches you. A subtle detail from historical observations suggests that some prisoners would repeatedly adjust their posture through the night, not to find comfort, but to prevent any one part of the body from becoming too cold or too numb. You begin to understand that pattern now. You shift your feet slightly, then stop. Your toes press against one another, sharing what little warmth they can. The sensation is faint but real. You hold it there, letting the contact remain. A brief pause settles in. Then your breathing deepens. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm continues steady and reliable, a quiet guide through the stillness. You follow it without effort, allowing it to shape your awareness. A faint ache begins to form along your side. Not sharp, just present. It comes from the pressure of your weight against the uneven surface, a reminder that no position here can be held indefinitely without consequence. You notice it then shift slightly, easing the pressure just enough to continue. The adjustment works. For a time, you remain in this new position, your body balanced between warmth and discomfort, between stillness and the need to move. It is a delicate balance, one that requires quiet attention rather than force. A distant sound echoes briefly. A step perhaps, or the faint movement of something against stone. You hear it, acknowledge it, then let it fade. Your focus returns inward toward the small details that shape your experience. Your shoulder relaxes. Your neck settles. Your breathing slows further. The cold remains, but it no longer dominates. Instead, it blends into the background, one part of a larger pattern that your body has begun to understand. A curious note from certain accounts mentions that prolonged exposure to cold in such conditions often led to a kind of dulling of sensation, where the body, unable to escape the chill, simply adapted to it. You feel a hint of that now. The edges softened, the sharpness fades. You shift again this time, only slightly adjusting the angle of your head. The straw beneath it compresses, creating a shallow support that holds for a moment before easing. You let it remain as it is. Stillness returns. Your thoughts drift once more, not in clear images, just in impressions. The idea of warmth, the memory of a softer place, the feeling of sleep that comes easily without effort or interruption. These thoughts pass through gently, leaving no trace behind. You return to the present. The straw, the stone, the cold air. Your body continues to adapt, finding ways to endure without strain. Each movement becomes smaller, more precise, until even those begin to fade. You remain curled, quiet, your breathing steady. Time stretches onward unmarked as the night continues to hold you within its slow, steady rhythm. And within that rhythm you find a fragile kind of rest, not complete, not perfect, but enough to carry you forward through the long winter darkness. You remain curled in that compact shape, your body holding on to what little warmth it can gather. The stillness deepens again, and for a while nothing changes. Your breathing stays slow. The cold settles into a steady background presence. The sounds beyond your cell drift farther away. Then quietly something shifts close to you. It begins as a faint sensation, a slight disturbance within the straw. You do not move at first. Your body remains still, your awareness sharpening just enough to notice the difference. The material beneath you feels less settled, as though something small has passed through it and left the strands uneven. You listen. Nothing. Then again a soft rustle. Closer this time. Your fingers tighten slightly where they rest against your arm. The motion is small, instinctive, but contained. You do not sit up, you do not reach outward, you simply remain aware. In many enclosed medieval spaces, it was common for small animals to share the same environment as prisoners drawn by shelter and the faint possibility of food. Their presence was rarely constant, but never entirely absent either. You feel it now, not directly, but near. A faint brushing sensation passes along the edge of your sleeve, so light it could almost be imagined. You hold still, your breath slowing even further as if any movement might draw attention. The sensation fades, then returns briefly. A tiny movement, quick and uncertain, as though something has paused, then shifted direction. You exhale slowly, controlled. The tension within you eases just a little, not fully gone, but less immediate. Whatever moved through the straw has passed on, leaving only the memory of its presence behind. A curious historical observation notes that prisoners often became accustomed to such encounters, treating them as part of the environment rather than a disruption. You begin to understand that mindset now. You remain still, listening, waiting, but nothing follows. The straw settles again, returning to its quiet, uneven shape. The faint disturbance disappears, replaced once more by stillness. You shift slightly. Carefully, your hand moves just enough to smooth the area where you felt the movement. The straw compresses under your touch, then holds. The surface feels no different than before, though your awareness of it has changed. You draw your arm back in, close, warm. Your breathing steadies again. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm returns familiar and grounding, guiding your attention away from the brief interruption. The cold remains constant, the darkness unchanged, the night continuing without pause. Another faint sound reaches you, not from the straw, from above. A soft scurrying distant, but clear enough to recognize. It travels along the stone, perhaps within the walls themselves, a quick and uneven pattern that lasts only a few seconds before fading. You listen, then let it go. These small presences move through the space without regard for you following their own paths, their own quiet routines. You exist alongside them, sharing the same environment without interaction. A lesser-mentioned detail in certain records suggests that such creatures often became part of the nightly experience, not feared, but expected. Their sounds mark the passage of time in a way that was oddly consistent. You shift your head slightly. The straw beneath it rustles softly, then stills. Your body remains in its compact shape, conserving warmth, minimizing movement. The position is not comfortable, but it has become familiar. Your awareness begins to soften again. The memory of the disturbance fades, leaving only a faint trace behind. Your senses, once sharpened, begin to relax, returning to that quiet balance between alertness and rest. Another breath. Slow. Even. The air feels the same as before, carrying its mixture of dampness and age. You inhale without resistance, now your body no longer reacting to the scent as strongly as it once did. Time continues to stretch, unmarked. Your thoughts drift once more lighter, now less defined. They move through your awareness without forming clear images, more like impressions that rise and fall without effort. A faint memory surfaces, not of a place but of stillness. A different kind, one where sleep came easily without interruption, without the need to remain aware of every small change. It lingers briefly, then fades, leaving you once again in the present. You remain here, curled, quiet, the straw beneath you, the stone below, the air around you. Everything continues as it has, and slowly, gently your body begins to settle once more into that fragile state of rest, where the night passes not through comfort but through endurance, one quiet moment at a time. You remain still after the small disturbance fades, your body gradually releasing the last traces of tension. The straw settles beneath you once more, returning to its uneven quiet. The faint sounds within the walls drift away, leaving only the slow rhythm of your breathing and the distant irregular drip that marks the passing moments. For a time, everything feels steady again. Then slowly you begin to notice something different. It is not a sound, not a movement. It is a feeling, a heaviness in the air, subtle but present, as though the space itself holds more than cold and silence. You inhale gently and the sensation becomes clearer, not through scent alone, but through something less defined, a thickness. You shift slightly, your awareness sharpening just enough to explore the change. The air feels cooler as it enters your chest, but there is also a faint dryness now, a subtle roughness that lingers at the back of your throat. You swallow. The sensation remains. In many historical descriptions of confined spaces during winter, the combination of cold air, poor ventilation, and close quarters often led to discomfort that went beyond temperature alone. Breathing itself could feel different, heavier, especially as the night deepened. You experience that now, not sharply, but steadily. You adjust your position, lifting your head slightly, then lowering it again as the effort proves unnecessary. The straw shifts beneath you and the air moves just enough to alter the feeling for a moment. Then it returns. A quiet awareness settles in. Your body is tired, not from exertion, but from the constant effort of enduring. The cold, the hunger, the stillness, all of it gathers in small ways, creating a slow accumulation of fatigue. You exhale. Long. Measured. Your chest rises and falls with the motion. and for a moment the act of breathing feels like the only thing that matters. Inhale, then release. Each cycle becomes a quiet focus, something to hold on to as the rest of the world fades slightly. A soft sound reaches you, closer than before. Not the quick movement of a creature, not the distant echo of footsteps, but something slower. A breath, perhaps. Drawn in unevenly, then released with a faint strain. You listen. The sound comes again. A quiet cough follows, brief but noticeable. Then silence returns. It lingers in your awareness, not loud enough to disturb the night, but present enough to leave an impression. In certain historical accounts, illness was a common companion in such environments, especially during colder months when bodies were weakened and air was shared. The signs were often subtle, at first small changes in breathing brief sounds in the dark. You remain still, listening. The sound does not repeat immediately, but the memory of it stays with you. It adds another layer to the night, another reminder of the shared nature of this space. You adjust your arms slightly, bringing them closer again. Your body seeks warmth and stillness. The heaviness in the air remains, though it becomes less noticeable as your attention shifts. Like the cold, like the smell, it settles into the background part of the environment rather than something separate. Your breathing continues, slow, even. You focus on it again, allowing it to guide your awareness inward. The discomfort in your throat fades slightly as your body adapts the sensation, softening into something you no longer need to think about. A faint drip echoes once more. Drip. Pause. Drip again. You follow it briefly, letting the pattern ground you. It offers a sense of continuity, a quiet rhythm that exists beyond your control but remains consistent enough to notice. Your thoughts drift again. Not far, just enough. A memory of open air returns not as an image but as a feeling. The ease of breathing, the absence of weight in each inhale. It lingers for a moment, then fades, leaving you once again within the confines of the cell. You remain here, still. Your body grows heavier with each passing moment, not in discomfort, but in a kind of quiet surrender. The need to move fades. The need to react diminishes. Even the sounds around you feel softer now. Distant. Less urgent. Another faint breath reaches you from somewhere nearby, followed by silence. It blends into the background, becoming part of the quiet tapestry of the night. You exhale slowly. The air leaves your body in a steady stream, carrying a trace of warmth that disappears almost immediately. You follow the motion with your awareness, then let it go. Your eyes remain closed, your body remains still. The cold, the air, the faint sounds all continue as they have, yet your experience of them shifts once more. They no longer demand attention, they simply exist. And within that existence you begin to drift again. Not fully asleep, not fully awake, just resting in that quiet space where the night passes slowly and your body, despite everything, continues to endure. You drift in that softened state for a while, your awareness dimmed but never fully gone. The night continues its quiet passage, unchanged in its rhythm, steady in its stillness. Your body remains curled, holding on to what little warmth it can preserve. Then slowly another sensation begins to rise. Weight. Not the weight of your body against the ground, but something added, something external. At first it is faint, almost easy to overlook. A gentle pressure along your wrist where your arm rests against your side. You remain still, listening, feeling. The pressure becomes clearer. Metal, cool and unyielding. You shift your hand slightly and the sensation responds immediately. A small resistance follows the movement, accompanied by a soft, unmistakable sound. A quiet clink. It echoes briefly, then fades. You pause, your awareness sharpening just enough to understand. The restraint had been there all along, resting unnoticed, while your senses adjusted to everything else. Now, in the deeper quiet of the night, it makes itself known. Your wrist moves again, just a fraction. The metal follows. Another faint sound. You stop. The realization settles gently. You are not entirely free to move. In various historical records, restraints such as shackles or chains were sometimes used to limit movement within cells, depending on the nature of the imprisonment. The presence of such constraints varied widely, but when they were used, they shaped every aspect of rest and motion. You feel that now, not as a dramatic limitation, but as a constant boundary. You adjust your arm slightly, testing the space allowed to you. The chain gives a little enough to permit small movements, but not enough to ignore. It rests against your skin, cold at first, then slowly warming with contact. The texture is rough in places. Worn! You run your fingers along it, gently tracing its shape without thinking. The links shift under your touch, producing a faint, dull sound that disappears quickly into the stillness. You exhale slowly. The presence of the restraint does not startle you, but it changes your awareness. Every movement now carries an added layer, a quiet reminder of its limits. You shift your position carefully. Your body remains curled, but your arm adjusts to accommodate the chain, finding a place where it rests without pulling. It takes a moment, a small series of movements, each one measured and deliberate. Then stillness returns. A lesser noted detail in some accounts suggests that prisoners often adapted to restraints over time, learning how to position their bodies in ways that reduced discomfort. What once felt intrusive became something to work around rather than resist. You begin that process now, instinctively. Your wrist settles into a position where the chain lies loosely, not taut, not pressing too firmly. The cold of the metal fades slightly as it absorbs your body heat, becoming less sharp, more neutral. You breathe, slow, even. The added weight becomes part of the background, like the straw, like the cold air. It does not disappear, but it no longer demands your full attention. A faint sound reaches you again. Another movement somewhere beyond your cell. A chain perhaps shifting in response to someone else adjusting their position. The sound is distant, but familiar now. You listen briefly, then return inward. Your body continues to settle, adapting not only to the environment, but to the limits placed upon it. Movements grow smaller, still shaped by the need to avoid unnecessary contact with the metal. You shift your shoulder slightly. The straw rustles. The chain answers with a faint clink. Then silence. You pause, letting both sounds fade before allowing yourself to relax again. The balance between movement and stillness becomes more delicate now, requiring a little more awareness, a little more care. A quiet reflection passes through your mind, not in words, just in feeling. The understanding that rest here is never complete, never entirely free. Every position, every moment of stillness exists within a set of boundaries that cannot be ignored. You exhale slowly. The air leaves your body in a steady stream, your chest rising and falling in a familiar rhythm. You follow it again, letting it guide your awareness away from the details of the restraint back towards something simpler. Breath, stillness, time. The night continues, unchanged. You adjust your hand one final time, ensuring the chain rests as comfortably as it can. The metal lies against your skin, no longer sharp, no longer surprising. Just present. You remain there, curled, quiet, your breathing steady. The cold, the straw, the faint sounds beyond the wall, and now the subtle weight of the chain all blend together into a single continuous experience. Nothing stands apart, everything exists together, and within that quiet your awareness softens, once more drifting gently toward rest. Even as the limits of your surroundings remain close, steady, and unchanging. You remain still for a while after adjusting to the quiet presence of the chain, your body settling once more into that careful balance between tension and rest. The added weight no longer feels new. It has already begun to fade into the background, absorbed into your awareness alongside the cold, the straw, and the dim air. Then gradually something else draws your attention. A presence. Not through sight, not through touch, but through the subtle shifts in sound and space around you. The quiet is not empty. It holds more than your own breath, more than the distant drip or the occasional movement of guards. There are others here. You sensed them before through faint sounds and distant murmurs, but now the awareness becomes clearer. It is not a sudden realization. It is a slow unfolding, like your senses are adjusting once again, revealing something that had always been present. A soft breath reaches you. Close, closer than before. You remain still listening. The sound comes again, drawn in slowly, then released with a slight unevenness. It carries a human rhythm, familiar and unmistakable, though no words follow it. You tilt your head slightly. Careful. The straw shifts beneath you, producing a faint rustle that quickly fades. You pause, listening for any reaction. None comes. The other presence remains quiet, steady, existing alongside you without direct interaction. In certain medieval holding spaces, prisoners were often kept in shared cells, especially when space was limited. Proximity varied, but in many cases individuals rested within hearing distance, sometimes within arm's reach, though separated by darkness and silence. You begin to understand that closeness now. It is not companionship. Not exactly. It is simply shared existence. You shift slightly onto your back, testing the space around you. Your movement is slow, controlled, mindful of the chain at your wrist and the uneven straw beneath you. The air touches more of your body in this position, cooler, more exposed. You pause, then remain. Another breath from nearby, soft, measured. You wonder briefly how close they are. A few feet, perhaps less. The darkness makes distance difficult to judge, and the stone around you alters the way sound travels. You do not reach out. You simply listen. A quiet adjustment comes from the other side, the faint rustle of straw, similar to your own movements. It is subtle, but clear enough to recognize. The rhythm matches your own earlier shifts, careful and deliberate. You are not the only one trying to find rest. A lesser discussed detail in some accounts suggests that shared confinement created a unique balance between comfort and unease. The presence of another person could offer a sense of connection, yet also remove any sense of privacy or solitude. You feel that balance now. It settles gently without urgency. You are aware of them. They are aware of you. Yet neither of you speaks. The silence holds. You exhale slowly, your breath steady, your body still. The awareness of another presence does not disturb your rest, but it changes the texture of the night. It feels less empty, more layered. A faint sound follows. A small cough restrained, quickly quieted. It lingers in the air for a moment before fading. You listen attentive, but the sound does not repeat. Your mind considers the possibility of communication, a word, a whisper, but the thought passes without action. The silence feels more natural, more fitting for the space you share. Words might break something delicate, something that exists without needing to be defined. You shift your arms slightly, adjusting the position of the chain once more. The metal responds with a soft clink, quieter this time, as though even that sound has learned to remain subdued. Then stillness returns. The presence beside you remains steady, neither approaching nor retreating. It exists as part of the environment now, no more intrusive than the cold or the straw. Your awareness softens again. The boundary between yourself and the space around you feels less distinct. You are part of it. The cell, the air, the faint sounds, and the other presence all blend into a single experience. Another breath reaches you, then yours answers, not intentionally, just naturally. Two rhythms separate but close, rising and falling within the same quiet night. Time continues to stretch, unmarked. A sense of shared space remains, but it no longer holds your full attention. It becomes another layer, something your mind acknowledges without focusing on. You close your eyes again. The darkness feels complete once more, uninterrupted by the faint shapes you might have imagined earlier. Your body remains still, your breathing steady, your awareness drifting gently inward. The cold persists. The straw supports you unevenly. The chain rests quietly against your skin, and nearby another person breathes. You remain here together, without words, without movement, sharing the same long winter night, each of you finding your own way to endure it. You lie there beside that quiet, unseen presence, your awareness no longer focused on solitude, but on something shared, even if unspoken. The rhythm of another person's breathing has settled into the background, close enough to notice, distant enough to leave you undisturbed. The night continues, still, slow, and within that stillness your thoughts begin to turn in a different direction. Not toward the space around you, but toward what might exist within it. A quiet unease begins to form, not sharp, not overwhelming, but present in the way shadows feel deeper when you cannot see them. You open your eyes again, though the darkness offers nothing new. The faint outline of the wall remains, the narrow suggestion of the opening above still barely visible. Yet the unseen feels larger now. You remain still listening. The sounds have not changed. The distant drip continues. The soft breathing nearby remains steady. Nothing moves beyond what you have already come to expect. And still something lingers, a feeling rather than a fact. In many periods of the medieval world, nights were often filled with beliefs that blurred the line between the physical and the imagined. Darkness carried meaning. Silence carried weight. The absence of light invited thoughts that daylight kept at a distance. You feel that now, not as fear, but as awareness. A faint shift in the air brushes against your face. You follow it instinctively, though there is nothing to see, nothing to confirm. The movement fades quickly, leaving only the steady cold behind. You exhale slowly. Your breath anchors you again. A subtle sound reaches you, a whisper, not from the nearby presence this time, but from somewhere farther away. It is softer, more distant, almost like the echo of a voice rather than the voice itself. It rises for a moment, then disappears. You listen. Nothing follows. Your mind considers it briefly. A person speaking. A murmur carried through the corridor. Or something less certain shaped by the quiet and the dark. A curious historical detail suggests that prisoners, especially during long nights, sometimes reported hearing sounds that blurred between reality and imagination, shaped by isolation and the conditions around them. The line between the two could become difficult to trace. You remain still. The thought passes. You do not hold on to it. Instead, you return to your breathing, letting it guide you back to something steady, something real. Inhale, then release. The rhythm continues unaffected by the shifting impressions around you. Another faint movement comes from nearby. The person beside you shifts slightly, the straw rustling under their weight. It is a familiar sound, now one you recognize without needing to think. It grounds you, reminding you of the shared reality of the space. You are not alone. The unseen becomes less significant. You adjust your position slightly, careful not to disturb the fragile balance you've found. The chain at your wrist responds with a quiet sound, then settles again. The metal feels less cold, now warmed slightly by your skin. A brief pause settles in. Then stillness returns. Your thoughts continue to drift, but they move more slowly now, less inclined to form into clear shapes. The unease that rose earlier fades, gently replaced by a softer awareness of the space around you. Another breath from nearby, then yours. The two rhythms remain separate yet connected by proximity. You notice how they rise and fall at different times, creating a quiet pattern that shifts without effort. Time passes, unmarked. The darkness holds steady. A faint drip echoes again, its rhythm unchanged. You follow it for a moment, letting it guide your awareness away from the subtle movements of your thoughts. Drip. Pause. Drip again. Your body remains still, your muscles relaxed where they can be. The cold continues, but it no longer feels intrusive. It is simply part of the night, something that exists without needing your attention. You close your eyes once more. The darkness within feels no different from the darkness around you. Yet the act itself signals a return to rest. Your breathing remains slow, even steady. The thoughts fade. The sounds soften. The presence beside you becomes just another part of the quiet. And gradually the night returns to its earlier state where nothing demands your focus and everything exists in a calm, unchanging balance. You remain there, still, listening less, drifting more, as the long winter night continues carrying you gently through its quiet depths. You drift in that softened quiet for a while, your awareness no longer fixed on any single sensation. The cold remains. The breathing nearby continues. The faint drip marks its slow, irregular pattern. Yet something begins to change, not in the space itself, but in how you perceive it. Time loosens. It slips away from any clear measure, no longer tied to moments you can count or follow. You try briefly to trace how long you've been here, how many breaths have passed, how many small sounds have risen and faded. But the effort dissolves quickly. There is nothing to hold on to. Your mind releases the question. You remain still, your body settled into that familiar curled position, your limbs drawn inward, conserving warmth. The straw beneath you feels unchanged, though your awareness of it has softened. The uneven pressure no longer calls your attention as it once did. You breathe. Inhale. Exhale. The rhythm continues steady and unbroken, yet even that begins to feel less like a marker of time and more like a quiet background motion, something that simply happens without need for focus. A faint sound reaches you, distant, unclear. It lingers for a moment, then fades before you can fully place it. You consider it briefly, then let it go. The effort to identify each sound has lessened, replaced by a gentle acceptance that not everything needs to be understood. In certain historical descriptions, long nights in confinement are often portrayed as stretching endlessly, not because they were longer, but because they lack the usual signs that mark their passing. Without light, without activity, time became something fluid. You experience that now. The night feels both still and moving, as though it exists outside the usual rhythm of hours and minutes. You cannot say how long you have been lying here, only that you continue to do so. You shift slightly, a small adjustment. The straw rustles beneath you, then settles again. The chain at your wrist responds with a faint sound, quieter than before, as though even it has become part of the stillness. You pause, then remain. Your body no longer seeks comfort in the same way. Instead, it seeks stability, a position that can be held without effort. You find it again not perfect, but sufficient. The presence beside you remains steady. A quiet breath, then another. Their rhythm continues separate from yours, yet familiar enough to blend into the background. You notice it without focusing, like a distant pattern that repeats without drawing attention. A subtle shift occurs within you. Your thoughts grow slower, less frequent. They no longer form clear images or questions. Instead, they pass through your awareness like faint impressions, leaving little behind. A brief memory rises, not detailed, just a sense of movement through open space of time marked by light and shadow. It feels distant, almost unreal, and fades as quickly as it appears. You return to the present. The cell, the cold, the quiet. Everything remains as it has been, yet your experience of it continues to change. What once felt unfamiliar now feels expected. What once demanded attention now passes without notice. A faint drip echoes again. You hear it, but you do not follow it this time. The pattern exists without needing to be tracked. It simply continues part of the larger stillness. Another small sound follows. A distant shift of stone or wood too faint to identify. It lingers briefly, then disappears. You do not try to place it. The need to understand has softened, replaced by a quiet acceptance of uncertainty. You breathe, slow, even. Your body grows heavier, not in discomfort, but in a kind of gentle surrender. The effort of remaining aware fades, replaced by something deeper, something quieter. A brief pause, then stillness. The night feels endless, yet not oppressive. It simply is. A continuous stretch of quiet unbroken by clear change. Your awareness drifts again, further this time. The boundary between waking and sleep becomes less defined, less important. You hover within it, neither fully present nor fully gone. A subtle detail from certain accounts suggests that prisoners often lost their sense of time during long nights, emerging only when light returned, surprised by how much had passed. You begin to understand that experience now. Time has no clear shape here, only presence. You remain where you are, curled, still, your breathing steady. The cold, the faint sounds, the nearby presence all continue without interruption. They no longer stand apart. They exist together, forming a single quiet environment that surrounds you completely. You close your eyes, though. You're no longer sure when they were open or closed before. It no longer matters. Your body rests. Your mind drifts. And the long winter night carries on, stretching beyond measure, holding you gently within its quiet, unchanging flow. You remain within that quiet drift where awareness feels light and unanchored when something begins to change again. It is not immediate. It does not arrive with sound or movement. It begins as a subtle shift in the darkness itself, a faint difference. You open your eyes slowly, not because you expect to see anything, but because your body senses a change before your mind can name it. At first, nothing appears different. The same dim outlines, the same soft grey along the edge of the wall. Then gradually you notice it. The darkness is no longer as deep. It has softened, just slightly. You remain still watching, letting your eyes adjust. The faint vertical line you noticed earlier becomes a little clearer, a little more defined. The space beyond it seems less distant now, as though something far away has begun to shift. Morning approaches, not fully, not yet, but enough to be felt. In many stone structures, especially those with narrow openings, the first signs of dawn were often subtle, barely perceptible changes in light that filtered through small gaps long before the sun itself became visible. You're witnessing that quiet transition now. You breathe in slowly. The air feels different. Still cold, still heavy, but touched by something new. A slight clarity, a faint sense of movement that was not present before. It is not warmth, but it is change. You shift your head slightly, careful not to disturb the position you've held for so long. The straw beneath you responds with a soft rustle, then settles again. The chain at your wrist moves just enough to remind you of its presence, then falls still. You listen. The sounds of the night have changed as well. The distant drip continues, but it feels less pronounced now, as though the space around it has grown larger. The silence is no longer as dense. It carries a different quality, one that suggests transition rather than stillness. A faint movement comes from nearby. The person beside you stirs. It's a small adjustment, a shift in position that produces a quiet rustle of straw. Their breathing changes slightly, becoming a little deeper, a little more aware. You remain still, listening. Another subtle change follows. A sound from the corridor. Not the slow measured steps of earlier, but something lighter, more frequent. Movement has begun again beyond your cell, though it remains distant, softened by the stone walls. A common observation from historical records suggests that early morning hours often brought renewed activity within such places as routines resumed, and the stillness of night gave way to the structure of day. You sense that shift now. It is not sudden. It unfolds gradually. You exhale slowly. Your breath feels steadier, more grounded. The long stretch of the night has passed, though it is difficult to say how long it truly lasted. Time remains uncertain, but the change in light offers a new point of reference. You look toward the faint opening again. The greyness has grown slightly brighter, though still far from clear. It outlines the space with a gentle contrast, revealing just enough to suggest shape without detail. The wall, the edge of the floor, the uneven surface of the straw, all remain as they were, yet they feel different now, more defined, more real. You shift your legs slightly, testing the stiffness that has settled into them. The movement is slow, careful, as your body responds to the long hours of stillness. A faint resistance follows, then eases as you adjust. You pause, then remain. A subtle ache lingers in your muscles, not sharp but present. It speaks of time spent without movement, of the body holding itself in one position for too long. You acknowledge it, then let it settle. Another breath. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm continues, but it feels different now. Less like something you hold on to, more like something that carries you forward. The night no longer presses in the same way. It begins to release. A faint sound reaches you again from the corridor. Voices, soft but clearer than before. They rise briefly, then fade, replaced by the sound of movement. The space beyond your cell is waking, though slowly, carefully, as if the transition from night to day requires its own quiet pace. You listen for a moment, then return inward. Your awareness shifts again, adjusting to the changing environment. The cold remains, but it feels less dominant now. The darkness lingers, but it no longer feels complete. You are no longer suspended in the endless stretch of night. You are moving towards something else. A new phase. The person beside you shifts again, their breathing steady but more active now. The shared space feels different, no longer defined solely by silence, but by the quiet signs of waking. You remain still, observing. Your body does not rush to move, does not seek to rise or change position. It holds on to the stillness, the familiarity of the night, even as the world begins to shift around you. A gentle awareness settles in. The night has passed, not fully, but enough. You close your eyes once more, not to return to sleep, but to rest within this moment of transition. The faint light continues to grow, the sounds beyond your cell continue to build, and the quiet rhythm of your breathing carries you forward into the slow arrival of morning. You rest with your eyes gently closed as the first hints of morning continue to gather beyond your cell. The change is subtle but steady, like a quiet tide that moves without force yet cannot be stopped. The darkness softens further, and the space around you begins to feel less enclosed even though nothing has truly shifted. Your body notices the difference. The cold remains, yet it feels less absolute. The air carries a faint sense of movement as though the world outside has begun to breathe again. You inhale slowly, and the sensation feels clearer, less heavy than before. You open your eyes. The faint grey light has grown slightly stronger, revealing more of the shapes around you. The wall no longer fades entirely into darkness. The straw beneath you appears as a textured surface, rather than an unseen layer. Even the narrow opening above feels more present, its outline defined against the dim light beyond. You remain still, observing. A commonly accepted view among historians is that medieval prisons varied widely in their conditions, from relatively structured holding areas to far harsher environments where comfort was never a consideration. What you have experienced through this night reflects one of the more severe realities where survival depended on endurance rather than support. You breathe, slow, even. Your body feels the weight of the night now, not as a single sensation, but as a collection of small ones. Stiffness in your limbs, a lingering chill in your hands and feet, a quiet fatigue that settles deep within you. You shift slightly. The movement is careful, deliberate. Your muscles respond slowly as though waking from a long stillness. The straw rustles beneath you, and the chain at your wrist gives a soft, familiar sound. You pause, then continue. A small adjustment of your legs, a slight roll of your shoulder. Each motion reveals the extent of your body's adaptation, how it has endured the hours of confinement and cold. An intriguing detail preserved in some records suggests that many prisoners developed routines for enduring the night's small habits of movement or stillness that help them manage discomfort. These were not taught. They emerged naturally, shaped by necessity. You recognize that process within yourself. The way you have curled inward, the way you have adjusted your breathing, the way you have responded to each sensation without resistance. It has all become part of you. A faint sound reaches you from the corridor. Clearer now. Voices no longer distant murmurs, but still subdued as though the morning has not fully claimed the space. They rise and fall, briefly carrying fragments of tone without meaning. You listen, then let them fade. The person beside you shifts again, their movement more pronounced this time. The straw rustles and their breathing changes, becoming more active, more aware. The shared space feels different now, less like a place of quiet endurance, and more like a place preparing to awaken. You remain still, not yet ready to move fully. Another breath. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm continues steady and grounding. It feels familiar, something that carried you through the long hours of darkness, and now carries you into this new moment. You look toward the opening once more. The light has grown stronger, though still soft, still distant. It does not reach you directly, but it shapes the space enough to make it feel less uncertain. You can see more, not clearly, but enough. A thoughtful observation from some scholars suggests that our understanding of medieval prison life remains incomplete, shaped by limited records and accounts that often focus on extreme cases. The full range of experiences is difficult to reconstruct, leaving many details open to interpretation. You sense that uncertainty now. Even in this moment, what you know is shaped by what you feel, what you notice, what you can piece together from fragments of experience. You shift your arm again, adjusting the chain slightly to reduce its pull. The metal feels less cold now, warmed by hours of contact, yet still firm, still present. You pause, then remain. Your body feels heavier than before, not from strain, but from the quiet accumulation of the night. Every moment of stillness, every small discomfort has settled into you, creating a gentle fatigue that lingers. And yet there is also a sense of change. The night is no longer holding you in the same way. It has begun to release. A faint movement passes through the corridor again, followed by a soft sound of something being handled. Perhaps a door, perhaps a tool. The details remain unclear, but the pattern is evident. Morning routines are beginning. You listen briefly, then return inward. Your awareness shifts once more, balancing between the external and the internal, between the changing world beyond your cell and the quiet state within your body. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to rest. The faint light continues to grow, the sounds beyond your cell continue to gather, and your breathing remains steady, carrying you gently through this moment of transition. The long winter night has not disappeared. It has simply given way to something new. You remain still as the quiet shift toward morning continues, your body resting in a place that feels both familiar and changed. The faint light beyond the opening grows a little stronger, softening the edges of the darkness that held you for so long. The cold is still there, but it feels different now, less enclosing, more distant. You inhale slowly, noticing how the air moves more freely, carrying a subtle clarity that was absent during the deepest hours of night. It does not warm you, but it gives the sense that something has lifted, even if only slightly. You open your eyes again. The shapes within the cell have become more defined. The wall no longer fades entirely into shadow. The uneven spread of straw beneath you can now be seen as well as felt. Even the faint outline of the other presence nearby seems to exist, though still indistinct, more suggestion than form. You remain quiet, observing. Your body feels the passage of time more clearly now. There is a stiffness in your limbs, a lingering heaviness that speaks of hours spent in stillness. You shift one leg, slowly testing its movement. A small motion. The straw rustles, then settles. You pause, letting your body adjust, letting the sensation ease. The movement brings a faint return of feeling, a slow awakening within muscles that had grown quiet. Accounts from the period often mention how prisoners relied on small practical adjustments to endure their surroundings, finding subtle ways to ease discomfort without drawing attention or wasting energy. These were not solutions, but they offered moments of relief. You recognize those moments now. You shift your shoulders slightly, then your arms, adjusting the position of the chain once more. The metal responds with a soft sound, then rests quietly against your skin. It no longer feels foreign. It simply exists as part of your experience. You exhale slowly. Your breathing remains steady, though it carries a slightly different rhythm, now more grounded, less focused on endurance. The long stretch of night has passed, and with it some of the tension that shaped your rest. A faint sound reaches you from nearby. The person beside you stirs again, their movement more pronounced this time. The straw rustles and their breathing shifts into a pattern that feels closer to wakefulness. You sense their presence more clearly now, though you still cannot see them fully. You remain still, respecting the quiet. A subtle awareness settles between you, not spoken, not acted upon, but present. The shared night has passed, and now you exist together in this moment of transition. You draw your knees slightly inward again, more from habit than necessity. The posture still offers warmth, still feels natural after so many hours, even as the need for it begins to lessen. You notice your hands. They feel different, less cold, not warm, but closer to it. You flex your fingers gently, feeling the slow return of movement, the faint stiffness easing with each small motion. A curious detail found in some lesser-known writings suggests that even minimal movement after long stillness could feel significant, as though the body were rediscovering itself piece by piece. You experience that now. You shift your head. The straw beneath it compresses, then rises slightly as you settle. The surface feels unchanged, yet your awareness of it has shifted. It no longer feels like something to endure, but something you understand. The faint light continues to grow. It reveals more of the space, though still in soft, muted tones. The cell remains small. The walls remain close. The opening above still narrow and distant. Nothing has changed, and yet everything feels slightly different. A quiet realization forms. You have endured the night, not through strength, but through adaptation, through small adjustments, quiet awareness, and the steady rhythm of your breath. A faint sound echoes from the corridor, clearer now. Movement. Voices. The beginning of activity that marks the day. You listen briefly, then let it fade your attention, returning inward. Your body feels ready to move more, though you do not rush. The stillness holds you a moment longer, allowing you to remain within this quiet space before anything else changes. Another breath. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm continues, but it feels lighter now, less burdened by the cold and the darkness that define the night. You remain where you are, for a moment longer, holding on to the quiet, holding on to the stillness. Before the day fully arrives, you remain still for a final moment, holding on to the quiet that lingers just before the day fully takes shape. The faint light has grown enough now to soften nearly every shadow within the cell. Nothing is bright, nothing is clear, yet the darkness that once surrounded you has thinned into something gentler. Your breathing remains slow, steady. The rhythm that carried you through the night now feels lighter, less necessary as a guide, yet still comforting in its familiarity. You inhale, noticing how the air feels more open, less confined, even though the space itself has not changed. You open your eyes. The cell reveals itself as much as it can. The uneven stone walls, the scattered straw, the narrow opening that allowed the first hint of morning to reach you. Each detail is quiet, understated, yet present in a way it could not be before. You shift your arm slightly. The chain moves with you, its sound soft, almost absorbed by the growing light. It feels less cold, now warmed by hours of contact, though its presence remains constant. You pause, then remain. Your body carries the memory of the night, the stiffness in your limbs, the faint ache along your side, the lingering chill in your hands and feet. None of it disappears with the arrival of morning, yet none of it feels as pressing as it once did. You have endured it. A widely accepted understanding of such conditions is that survival often depended not on dramatic change, but on the ability to adapt to what could not be altered. You have done that quietly, without force, simply by remaining present within each moment. You breathe. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm continues though. Now it feels less like an anchor and more like a gentle continuation, something that moves with you rather than holding you in place. A faint movement comes from beside you. The other presence shifts again, more fully this time. The rustle of straw is clearer in the soft morning light, and their breathing carries a sense of waking awareness. You do not turn toward them. You do not speak. The shared silence remains, yet it feels different now, less heavy, more open. You notice your hands again, flexing your fingers, slowly feeling the gradual return of ease in the movement. The sensation is subtle, but it carries a quiet reassurance. Your body responds even after the long stillness. A small detail from certain historical observations suggests that the transition from night to morning often brought a sense of relief, not because conditions improved, but because the uncertainty of darkness gave way to something more defined. You sense that shift now. The unknown has softened. The space feels clearer. You draw a slow breath, letting it fill your chest fully, then release it without hurry. The air still carries its familiar scent, still cool, still heavy with the presence of the cell, yet it no longer feels overwhelming. You remain where you are, not rushing, not resisting, simply present. The sounds from the corridor grow slightly more distinct. Movement continues beyond your cell voices, rising and falling in quiet patterns. The day has begun even if it has not fully reached you yet. You listen briefly, then return inward. Your body remains still, though it feels more capable of movement now. The long night has passed, and with it the need to conserve every motion. Yet you do not move immediately. There is no urgency here, no sudden change that demands it. Instead, you rest within this moment, a gentle transition. The faint light continues to grow, revealing more of the space without altering its nature. The walls remain close. The straw remains uneven. The chain remains in place. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has shifted. A quiet realization settles in. Sleep did not come as it once did. It did not carry you fully away from this place. Instead, it moved around you, touching you lightly, never fully taking hold. What you experienced was not rest in the way you once understood it, but something else. Endurance, stillness, awareness, and within that, a different kind of rest. You close your eyes one last time, not to return to sleep, but to gather the quiet that remains. Your breathing stays slow, your body relaxed, your awareness soft. The night is gone, the day has begun, and you remain here steady and present, carrying the experience of the long winter darkness within you, not as something to escape, but as something you have passed through. Now, as the light continues to grow and the sounds of the waking world gather beyond your cell, you allow yourself to rest in this final moment of stillness. There is no need to rush, no need to change anything yet. Just breathe, slowly, gently, and let the quiet carry you a little further, even as the day unfolds around you, soft and steady, without urgency, without demand, simply continuing as it always has. Sleep well,